welcome back to the Crawl Room. We're back once again in this wonderful ranty room for all things Formula 1. And as you can tell, I am feeling much better and I am ready for a good old rant and a shout and everything like that. Back to its best. Back to its best. The Crawl Room is going to be this episode, I am sure of it. So the Mexico Grand Prix has come to a close. And what could be said for this weekend overall? It was okay. I think, yeah, maybe okay. Probably too good for in the good category for Mexico, perhaps. But yeah, it was okay, wasn't it? It was solid enough. There was a little bit of drama, a little bit of tension, a little bit of excitement here and there in places. But overall, yeah, all much of a muchness. Looked like option tyres and different tyres were going to work out, but didn't work out, etc. And yeah, Max Verstappen still won, didn't he, in the end? So yeah, there's always that, isn't there? So if you've never seen this series before, I award the drivers out a maximum of 10 points based on their race weekend's performance, and I go all the way down to 0 if they have a particularly bad one. Take a look out for bonus points though. They're sometimes an offer for some drivers to do something extra special during a race, and on the very rare occasion I do award minus points to those drivers that do something extra special, but for all the wrong reasons. Let's take a look at the current Crawl Room standings then going into this episode. It's on the screen now for you to take a look at. Have a look and see where your favourite driver is, and can you expect them to go up? Can you expect them to go down? Could they be joining that ever-growing list of disqualified drivers in that disqualified pile because I've had enough of them? Well, all will be revealed very, very shortly. So let's kick things off then with the race winner, Max Verstappen, once again. 16 races, won in a single season, is now another new record to add to his bow and to add to his collection of record-breaking things he's done this year, over the past couple of years, etc, etc. 51 wins under his belt now, ties with Alain Prost as well, of course. That means there's only Vettel, Schumacher, and then, of course, Lewis Hamilton ahead of him in the all-time winning standings list. So Vettel could get by the end of the season. If he wins the next 3 races, he'll be ahead by 1. And then, of course, some way to go for to catch Michael and, of course, Lewis Hamilton as well. But I'm sure he'll get up there. I think, personally speaking, I reckon he could match, maybe just beat Michael, is my honest opinion. I think come the 2026 regulations, Red Bull might slip back a little bit and the wins will become a lot less infrequent. So he might get to 70 or 80 and then see where it goes from there. But yeah, nonetheless, we're talking about Max Verstappen's race overall, and once again, it was that boring and waffling about something else. Let's be honest though, his race overall was just pretty much nailed and done by the first turn, wasn't it? Qualified in P3, which, you know, it's not pole position, but around Mexico with that long straight off the line, it's great to get a good tow, get past the cars that were giving you the slipstream, round from turn 1, and ahead he went into the distance. Elected for an early pit stop strategy compared to everyone else around him. No one else sort of bit the bullet and followed him, did there? It was around lap 19 he came in, so it was an early stopper and looked to be committing himself to a 2-stop. As it was then, the Ferraris didn't follow and didn't play suit, so he pretty much overtaken them anyway before their first pit stop came round. So it was a whole pit stop ahead of Charles Leclerc after that all happened and all unfolded, but of course Ferrari were hoping to get the better tyre life at the end. As it was then, of course, the red flag intervened. Verstappen had already pitted for the hard compound tyre at that point because he got a free pit stop anyway, and then stayed on those hard tyres after the restart, made himself known that he was just going to piss off into the distance again. So you can throw as many red flags as you want at Max Verstappen at the moment. It doesn't make any blind bit of difference to his race weekends overall. He still ends up winning. So for Max Verstappen this weekend, I've awarded him a solid 8 points. I'm not giving him a perfect 10 because he didn't get pole position. But, you know, again, he's in the best car. I have to be really harsh with his scores because, of course, the wins come easy, the poles come easy. So when there's a little slip up, I have to knock a mark or 2 off. But otherwise, a perfect weekend. Wasn't moaning as much on the radio either this weekend, which was nice to see. And, yeah, 8 points to Max Verstappen. Finished in second place and remaining there it is, of course, Lewis Hamilton. Fantastic to see him get that second place once again, with the fastest lap point done on the end as well. So he proved that he had pace in that car. I think they were managing temperatures more than anything else in that Mercedes. Don't think there'd have been a match for the Red Bull car anyway, to be honest with you, but it was good to see Lewis Hamilton back up there, and as well, like, doubling down on what he did in the US, of course, because everyone said, well, he only got there because he had an illegal flaw and all this shit. No, he didn't. There was nothing really wrong with the flaw. He just took a curb a bit hard and chomped a lump out of it. So, yeah, you know, it was all minimal, finite amounts of detailing, of course, and the finite amounts done to the floor. The sprint format didn't help, of course, in the US. But this weekend, doubled down once again and proved to everyone that that Mercedes car does have the pace. It has it over a single lap, it has it over a race pace, and it is looking like a solid car, especially in the hands of Lewis Hamilton, of course. Halves the gap now from 39 points down to 20 on Sergio Perez for that runners-up title. So had he not been disqualified in the US, he would have been already 10 points ahead of Checo. So, yeah, I'm sure he's going to overtake him. It's inevitable, isn't it, by the looks of things? Checo's getting no better, is he? So, for Lewis Hamilton this weekend, I've awarded him a solid 9 points. 9 points to Lewis Hamilton. I think he's driven really well, really deserving of a fantastic effort once again. Deserving of 9 points. I've knocked him a point off just because the qualifying wasn't as good as what it was in the US, and the car looked to have the pace to maybe be a little bit better than it showed on paper on the Saturday. So, being harsh again, but once again, one of the best cars on the grid again, and deserving of a good 9 points. Not disrespecting anything. He got 10 in Austin, he's got 9 here, and yeah, done a really good job as Lewis Hamilton. So yeah, congratulations to him. 9 points on the Crawl Room. Securing third place and the final podium position is Sha-la-la, oh, sha-la-la, sacre bleu, sha-la-la. Fantastic effort, great to see him up here securing a podium after yet another pole position. He gets all them pole positions. He's had like something like 857 pole positions now, hasn't he? And translated into about 4 wins in his career. Honestly, it's diabolical, isn't it? His pole to win ratio is absolutely atrocious. But that's not Charles Leclerc's fault. The car was clearly good enough for a single lap pace, despite the fact that the Ferrari drivers were very surprised when they got out of that car and realised they'd locked out the front row. Leclerc, though, just hunkered down, did what he could, maintained second throughout most of the race. Once Verstappen got past at the start, of course. And then the red flag came out. They elected to go onto the hard compound tyre. Of course, Hamilton went for the mediums. The mediums in the hands of Lewis Hamilton just managed the entire race. It was really, really impressive to see. Leclerc was hoping to try and catch back up that deficit again. But again, all managing, cooling. Look, we could go for second, but we could cook the car. Let's just get third, shall we? And third he got. So yeah, it was great to see him back on the podium. And once again, a disqualified driver of the US secures a podium here. So second and third is Hamilton and Leclerc. So that makes amends for what happened in the US, especially for Leclerc, not just with the shite strategy that Ferrari gave him, but then being chucked out in the end as well. So yeah, nice to see a few smiling faces on the podium there, and a great result for Charles Leclerc. I was overly harsh and overly critical of Leclerc's score last weekend out. I only gave him 7, which was very, very low, considering he was pretty much just shafted by the strategy and not his fault at all. But this weekend, P1 on the grid, pole position, and securing a podium in a Ferrari. It's going to be a perfect 10 from me. It has to be a perfect 10 to sha-la-la. Maybe worthy of a 9 this weekend, but because I scored him solo at the US, I'm amending that a little bit and just giving him a little bit of an extra point here compared to what he should have had at the US, I guess. But yeah, for me personally, a perfect 10. I don't think he did anything wrong. A pole position, fantastic effort, out-qualified his teammate, out-qualified that Red Bull and Max Verstappen more importantly. And then the race happened, the start happened, we knew Max was always going to get through. It was able to be damage limitation and run second throughout most of it. Maybe had the red flag not came out, he could have secured the second over Hamilton, but I think Hamilton would have come anyway. But drove a smart race, great race overall, and a perfect 10 for me. For sha-la-la. Finishing in 4th place, we come to Carlos Sainz. Smooth operator, smooth operator. Yes, indeedy do. Smooth operator here he is, securing P4 after qualifying in P2. So similar to his teammate, really. Solid effort, good effort. You know, can't really criticise what he did. Overall, this weekend, he was just 1 position away from a podium finish. Couldn't stay ahead of Hamilton. That was due to the Ferrari strategy mainly of keeping them out for too long, that Sainz got leapfrogged by Hamilton doing the undercut and then had no pace in the race on the hard tyre to try and match Hamilton at the start. And of course then they had to manage the gaps between each other, a few seconds here and there between the lot of them to basically just make sure they didn't cook the cars, cook the engines. So yeah, cooling a big issue of course at Mexico with the high altitudes. So yeah, you know, Ferrari overall, a solid points all really. Helps them against their hunt with McLaren, of course. McLaren trying to hunt them down, but they've extended the gap now with just 3 rounds left plus a sprint. So looking more unlikely that McLaren are going to get them, but we shall wait and see. So for, of course, Carlos Sainz this weekend, I would award him 7.5. 7.5 to Carlos Sainz. Overall, beaten by his teammate this weekend, you know, beaten to pole position, beaten to a podium finish, and despite the fact it was a great drive, Leclerc just had that little bit more in him, didn't he? He had that little bit more to give just to get that pole and to get that podium. Sainz overall, though, don't want to take anything away from him. A solid weekend once again, and that's why he's getting a solid 7.5. It's a good effort, but it's not outstanding like Leclerc. Finishing in 5th place, we come to the first of the McLarens. It is Lando Norris.
Yeah, I can beat Max Verstappen, no big deal. In a donut eating contest, maybe.
There we have it then. Latifi of the week to Lando Norris, and with it comes a final warning. Can you believe that? 3 Latifis Lando Norris has accrued this season so far. There can be no more. Any more mistakes, any more mishaps, and he will be joining the people in that disqualified pile. Who'd have thought it, eh? Who'd have thought it? Now, let's not take anything away from Lando this weekend. A staggering effort to get up from P19 up to P5. Wow, oh wow. Made some big moves there. Made some great gains. Some great overtakes. I am not doubting that whatsoever. But what I am doubting is the fact that he shouldn't have been down there in the first place. Totally screwed qualifying up. I don't care whether the medium run would have been enough to knock him, get him through into Q2, or whether he would have get knocked out. That was a team decision. He screwed it up on the 2 soft runs he had. So, yeah, for Lando Norris this weekend, it's a Latifi of the week because he completely ballsed up the qualifying. Then in the race itself, he balls that second restart up when he was running round in 10th or 11th at that point, wasn't he? So instead of going forwards already off the line, he went backwards down to 14th, 15th place, and then had to carve his way through. Where could he have been had he had a good qualifying? And if he did have the poor qualifying anyway, where could he have been had he not ballsed up that second restart? So yeah, P5, brilliant. He's made all them places up. But that McLaren car is a quick one. It got all the way up to 5th place from the back twice, but he shouldn't have been at the back on either occasion. He should have been up there, inside the top 5 in qualifying, and he should have been challenging for a 2nd place finish at the very least. At the very least. That McLaren had such pace, I think it maybe, just maybe, could have been on the back and harrying that Red Bull and Max Verstappen. I'm not going to say we're going to get past it, but judging by the pace in the hands of Lando, I think he could have got, you know, could have made a match, you know, could have really struggled and could have made Red Bull sweat there. So, yeah, so Latifi of the week to Lando Norris, because as much as it was an impressive drive, it shouldn't have been down there in the first place. It should have easily been ahead of the Ferraris and the Mercedes of Hamilton, minimum, I would say. But instead, P5, and yeah, costing himself points, costing the team points, effectively. It's a great recovery, don't get me wrong. But it shouldn't have been a recovery. That's my issue. If it had been a mechanical failure in qualifying, fair enough. But it wasn't. It was a mistake, and then another mistake in the race after the second restart that sent him down the back of the grid again. So yeah, recovered himself out of a sticky situation, but can't recover himself in the cruel room. It is a Latifi of the week to Lando Norris, and with it, a final warning. Then we come to George of the Russell. Oh, I don't even know what to watch out for anymore because he's just mediocre, isn't he? He's just mediocre. I don't really know what's happened to him. Hamilton up there in 2nd place, a storming drive once again. Here he is, P6. Struggling right at the end to hold off Daniel Ricciardo in an AlphaTauri. That's how great Russell's race went. Almost lost out to an AlphaTauri. Yeah. So George Russell disqualified anyway, as mentioned, so he can't score any points on the crawl room. But had he not already been disqualified, he probably would have been here and now. And yeah, if he was nowhere near getting disqualified at this point, he'd have still been getting a very low score, because that was a poor effort in comparison to what George has been capable of in previous seasons and in previous races this season as well. Qatar, of course, just a couple of races ago. Seems like a totally different person now, doesn't he? Piss poor US, piss poor in Mexico, and yeah, disqualified anyway on the crawl room. Finishing in 7th place, we come to Daniel Ricciardo in the Alpha Tauri. At long last, Daniel Ricciardo has been able to do something with that car and prove his worth within the Alpha Tauri squad. Maybe, just maybe, proving that he does deserve that seat for 2024, although I'm still sceptical somewhat. Once again, with that Alpha Tauri team, as always, we've not been able to get a fair comparison between the two drivers, because Yuki Tsunoda had to start from the pit lane anyway this weekend because of all the engine penalties he had received, because they put basically fresh power unit in, fresh turbo, fresh everything. And yeah, so Yuki Tsunoda was going to start from the back anyway. So assisted Ricciardo in Q1 and Q2 to give him a tow, but of course didn't use any tyres, didn't get through into Q3, didn't set a representative lap time in Q2, and started from the back. But yeah, you know, overall, you can't take away what Daniel Ricciardo did. P4 on the grid, lost out some faster cars, but are we really going to argue with that? Are we really going to say that Ricciardo should have finished 4th after starting 4th? You could to a certain degree, but overall in the race pace with that Alpha Tauri, it was always going to lose a couple of places, wasn't it? And the fact he was just on the back of George Russell at the end there, not quite getting through, was a bit of a shame. But yeah, it just shows how much pace he had in that car still. And yeah, he lost out to some quicker cars, but still 6 points, and that is a crucial 6 points, because that elevates Alpha Tauri up into 8th place in the Constructors' title now, from down at the back and dead last. He's tied on points with Alfa Romeo, but they get it because this P7 is a better result than what Alfa Romeo have managed all season long. So be interesting to see how the rest of the season plays out. Alpha Tauri got a 12-point deficit to Williams for that 7th place, and judging by that Alpha Tauri pace at Mexico with Ricciardo and with Tsunoda, maybe, just maybe, they're going to be a threat for that P7 overall, which would be ridiculous, wouldn't it, considering how bad they've been this season. But we shall see. We shall see indeed. Daniel Ricciardo, though, is going to be no less than a perfect 10 from me. Very, very happy with that. Great to see him up here once again. Great to see his mojo back. And yeah, as much as I am critical of Daniel Ricciardo, and this is just a one-off performance where it might have suited the car more than it suited Ricciardo as a driver, it'll be interesting to see how they can go forward into Brazil and secure more points, whether they can, whether they can't. And it will just be overall interesting to see if AlphaTauri can make inroads on the cars ahead. They've had plenty of updates this season since that summer break. A lot have come in, and it's good to see that some of them are working as well. So it's going to be a perfect 10 to Daniel Ricciardo. Then we come to Oscar Piastri. What's your favourite pastry? That's right, the second of the McLarens is here in P8. And what could be said for Piastri's race weekend overall? It was okay, wasn't it? It looked like he'd had one up over Lando Norris after the qualifying, of course. The disaster that happened for Lando, it didn't happen for Oscar Piastri. Was able to qualify himself solidly inside the top 10. It was around P6, P7 on the grid, wasn't it? And in the race itself, he just sort of stayed there and in and around that area for quite some time. Came under attack from Yuki Tsunoda, quite literally on a couple of occasions. Tsunoda sending himself off into the shadow realm, whereas Piastri was able to keep going but was hobbled, did have a bent wishbone as a result of that. Well, not bent, but it was certainly damaged nonetheless. So did pick up a bit of damage, which stunted his performance at the end. But here he is picking up a couple of points with 8th place. And overall, an okay weekend, but nothing special. So for Oscar Piastri, it's going to be 6.5 from me. As much as I've given Lando Norris a Latifi, he was able to carve his way through the field more efficiently. Tsunoda, of course, caused the damage to the McLaren of Oscar, which wasn't his fault at the latter stages of the race, but I personally think if he'd have got some of Lando's pace, he shouldn't have been there anyway. He should have been ahead of Ricciardo, should have been well clear of Yuki Tsunoda, should have been inside the top 5, basically. So there we go. 6.5 to Oscar Piastri. Finishing in 9th place, we come to Alexander Albon in the Williams. That is a trio of points position finishes for him now. The last 3 races in a row, Alex Albon has secured at least un point for the efforts of Williams. Here he is picking up 2 points with P9, and overall a solid weekend. Had his lap time deleted in qualifying, didn't he, which was a bit of a shame. That Q2 effort that would have seen him inside Q3 sadly trumbled down to P14, didn't he, off the line, elevated to P13 with someone else's penalty, was it? I can't quite remember, but nonetheless he was down there outside the points, but then ran inside the points for quite a number of times. He was unlucky under that safety car then to red flag period, because of course Williams had no choice but to pit Albon at that situation, because they'd have lost 12 seconds as opposed to 22 seconds. They took that, but he was P9 at that position, but after the pit stop dropped to P12 and then had the red flag. So had they just kept him out there knowing there were going to be a red flag, hindsight's a wonderful thing, isn't it? Alex Albon would have took the restart at P9, of course, with fresh tyres, such as the rules of the red flag scenario and situation. So yeah, for Alex Albon overall this weekend, it was a great way to see him inside the points for quite a number of laps. Did a great job overall. And for me personally, it's going to be a solid 7.5 to Alex for me. 7.5 to Alex Albon, and I think that's fair. I'm going to knock him a couple of points off for the lap time deletion in qualifying, which was a huge shame. You know, had he had that effort go his way, it'd have been inside Q3. It'd have started inside the top 10. It could have been running as high as where Ricciardo was come the end, which would have been a lot more beneficial to him than just picking up a couple. So yeah, Alex Albon for me has done a stunning job this weekend. A solid performance once again, and it is 7.5 on the crawl room to him. And last of the runners inside the points, at least, it is Esteban Ocon in that Alpine. And what could be said for his race weekend overall, other than it was alright, wasn't it? The Alpine really struggling with the altitude. They were practically just cutting holes in the bodywork come the end to try and keep the cooling down on that Alpine. It was silly stuff, wasn't it? It had chuffing holes everywhere. It didn't start to look sophisticated by the end of it, let me tell you. Put all these lovely fancy fairings and ductings on, and oh, look at us, aren't we keeping cool? And then I think by the end they were like just carving wedges out. From what I saw on pictures on Twitter, it looked a bit of a handful, didn't it? It looked a mess. So Alpine this weekend will be lucky and happy just to secure 1 point, which is better than probably what they thought they were going to get. In regards to the relationship between Ocon and Gasly, I think that's broken down again even further now. Pierre Gasly told to hold station behind Ocon, despite the fact that Gasly looked like he was quicker and could have maybe got past Alex Albon, and as of course he didn't. And of course they were attacking Hulkenberg at the time as well, so it looked like Gasly had the opportunity and did have the tyres on the hard tyres to maybe get a couple of places ahead. But as it was, he was told to hold station, and begrudgingly he did so. Alex Albon, though, did hold off both of the Alpines in the end, with Ocon behind him. So for Esteban Ocon, it is going to be a solid 6.5 to him. Nothing special this weekend, just slightly better than average due to finally getting himself inside the points. But yeah, you know, again, the Alpine really struggled with the heating, the altitude conditions, struggled with the track temperatures, struggled with the cooling. It was all in all just a bit of a write-off weekend for him. So yeah, I've just scored him slightly better than average. Didn't do anything really wrong, didn't do anything really right, and it's 6.5 to Esteban Ocon. Finishing just outside the points and in 11th place, we come to Pierre Gasly in the other Alpine, of course, not allowed to overtake his teammate to try and have a go at Nico Hulkenberg or Alex Albon. No, Pierre, know your place. Alex Albon's the favourite Frenchie in this team, thank you very much, because he's Esteban Ocon. That's right, you've not got a rhyming, slangy name, I'm afraid, Pierre. It's just Bonjour, Pierre, Bonjour. Isn't that right, Dave, eh? Mr. Hook, Mr. Hook. Keep nicking my Georgia the Rustler, I'll keep nicking your Bonjour. And you can't nick a language either, but you can nick a slogan, so there you are, Dave. Bitter because Dan beat him to 2,000 subscribers and nicking my catchphrases. Oh, he's a devil, that Dave, isn't he? So yeah, Pierre Gasly this weekend overall. Outside the points, as already mentioned and covered with Esteban Ocon. Just difficult weekend for Alpine overall, cutting holes here, there and everywhere to try and keep the cooling. That of course affects aero, affects balance, affects cornering, just affects everything in general really, so it wasn't a fun weekend by them. But Pierre Gasly nonetheless just misses out on a points paying position. But for him, I have decided to award him a solid 7, and I've given him a little bit more than his teammate Esteban Ocon, because he was on the hard compound tyres, and I think had he been allowed to have a go at overtaking his teammate, heaven forbid, and have a go at Hulkenberg and Alex Albon ahead of him, I do feel he may have been able to get one or two of them. Of course, we know Hulkenberg tumbled down the order at the end there, but I do honestly feel like he could have got Hulkenberg and then got Alex Albon, so it would have made a difference to the overall points for Alpine. I reckon they'd have been picking 2 up instead of 1. That's my honest opinion on the matter. And generally, I just feel a little bit sorry for Gasly for once again getting treated like shit by the Alpine team. But there we go. That's life, isn't it? So yeah, a solid 7 to Pierre Gasly. Finishing in 12th place, we come to Yuki Tsunoda.
Does anyone need a Formula 1 driver who can underperform in a car capable of having good results? Ferrari, Haas, Alfa Romeo, Williams, Aston Martin all have that seat taken.
Ah, Jesus Christ almighty, Yuki, what are you doing to me? What are you doing, Yuki? Honest to God, what a fantastic weekend he was having up until that point. As mentioned, he was unable to really set a representative lap time in qualifying. He could have started in pole position, but he wouldn't have been there. He'd have been starting at the back due to all the engine penalties. He carved his way through the field nicely, got himself up to around about 14th, 13th position, so managed to climb a few positions nonetheless. Elected to go for the early pit stop to get some clear air and get some pace in that car. Of course, that then meant he undercut quite a lot of other cars as well, and was up into the realms of the points in around that 10th to 11th sort of area, wasn't he? He was doing quite well there. Of course, then the red flag came out. Yuki Tsunoda would have had to have done a second pit stop, and soon, but that red flag came at the right time for Yuki because he was able to put on a fresh set of tyres without a penalty at all. So he started the race back again in about that P11 area as mentioned, and then in the race itself carved his way up to around P8, P7, and then was battling with Oscar Piastri for a good couple of laps there, a good number of laps to be honest. He was battling with him for quite a few, but made 2 do-or-die attempts. One of them didn't quite come off and made slight contact with Oscar Piastri into turn 2, costing momentum and speed down the next straight with a little bit of DRS, was unable to overtake. And then next time around, he tried to go around the outside and then pinch Oscar Piastri at the apex. It didn't work, there was contact, and off went Yuki Tsunoda, fired off into the sunset, I'm afraid. Recovered here to P12, which is still a respectable effort, but nonetheless has to be a Latifi of the week. Cost his team ultimately 4 points as a minimum, with making that contact with Oscar Piastri, of course, and yeah, it could have been a little bit more as well. But either way, it cost him a minimum of 4 points for that team. When they're only 12 points behind Williams now, that could have already been down to single digits had Yuki stayed where he was and got it down to 8, which would have been a lot more realistic with 3 rounds left. That would have been a hell of a fight there. As it is, they're only tied on points with Alfa Romeo as well, of course. If they have a bad weekend and Alfa Romeo pick up 1 point or have just a general better result, then that could switch positions as well. So it was a crucial few points there that went missing, and sadly it was all Yuki Tsunoda's fault. So yeah, a second error of the season nets him his second Latifi of the season as well. And Yuki Tsunoda misses out on points after what was going to be a fantastic charge through the field. Good bit of luck there with the red flags as well. And you think finally something's going Yuki's way again. Brilliant. It happened in the US. It's going to happen here. And then it doesn't, and it all goes wrong. And it was all on Yuki. So Yuki Tsunoda, Latifi of the week. Unlucky for some, and unlucky, of course, for Nico Hulkenberg. What a shame. His 200th Grand Prix start in Formula 1, and it just looks like he just might scrape a point in that race, didn't it? But as always, that Haas car decides it's got enough for its tyres, it's chewed them to pieces, thank you very much. And with 6 laps to go, Esteban Ocon swiftly passed him, Pierre Gasly shortly followed him, and Yuki Tsunoda got him with a couple of laps left to go as well, which was a huge shame to see. I would have loved to have seen Hulkenberg in his 200th start secure a points paying position. He's picked up a few points in some sprint races previously, but his last time he'd scored points on a Sunday was all the way back in Australia, where we had the farce and the fiasco of the red flag at the end there and everything that kicked off. But nonetheless, Hulkenberg would have scored points in that race anyway. he just scored a few more. So yeah, it's a great shame really for Hulkenberg to miss out. So close yet so far, but did everything he could. Qualifying once again, did what he could, got into Q2, couldn't really expect much more than that. The race itself, he was running around inside the points for quite a majority of it, it must be said, in that 9th, 10th window, and he did that after the restart as well, held himself in those places well. But those medium tyres had just cried enough, and it was so knackered at the end, wasn't it? Those tyres were so gone. He came out the final corner almost like the car was crabbing. You could see the lines he'd left on the exit of the corner because he was just sliding. There was nothing left out of those medium tyres, and people said, well, why didn't they put him on the hard tyres? Haas have this fantastic ability of not being able to switch the tyres on right, and then have this fantastic ability for once they're switched on to chew them to pieces and kill them. So had he been on the hard tyres, no doubt he'd have slipped down the order too far anyway, and probably would have ended up finishing P13 with better tyres, but was able to make no progress. Or he goes on the mediums and just crosses his fingers and toes and everything else that they hold on. Sadly, he was 6 laps short this weekend, but he did such a great job, didn't he? For Nico Hulkenberg, it's a perfect 10 from me this weekend. His 200th Grand Prix start. This, once again, just proves the kind of look that Nico Hulkenberg has in Formula 1, unfortunately. Did everything he could, held on for so long, put up a fantastic, fair, clean defence against those 2 Alpines behind him and Yuki Tsunoda there as well towards the end. Held up a right train of cars for that final points-paying position, but unfortunately, inevitably, the tyres literally dropped off to the point where Nico Hulkenberg could no longer defend out of that final corner, and even the straight line speed of the Haas down that long straight could not overcome a Alpine with DRS. So yeah, shame to see, but he did a fantastic job. Nico Hulkenberg, a perfect 10 from me on the Cruel Room. Then we come to Zhou Guanyu.
Hey guy, come join me in the disqualified pile. Don't worry, the goat doesn't bite. Well, not unless you want me to. Growl.
And there we have it. Zhou Guanyu has managed to escape many Latifis this season, however he was not able to escape a disqualification. He's one short effectively, he's joined Lance Stroll in not getting 3 Latifis then a disqualification. He's only had 2 for some reason. I think it's just a case of other people have been far worse at occasions where Zhou's under-delivered, and it means that he goes unnoticed, anonymous. I give him a low score, but I don't think it's Latifi worthy because someone else has fucked up majorly, like the likes of George Russell, for example, that's done it plenty of times this season. But nonetheless, I can't escape it anymore now. Zhou Guanyu into Q3. Here he is finishing down at the back. What can I do? What can I do? You know, people are going to say it's the car, it's the car. I don't think it's the car. I don't think it's the car at all. I think it's both of these Alfa Romeo drivers seriously underperforming and seriously under-delivering. Let's have a think here. We have Alpha Tauri's racing around inside the points, both of them, for quite some time as well, let's not forget. We've got Alex Albon securing points. We've got Nico Hulkenberg in that absolutely dog-shit Haas that can't keep hold of its tyres inside the points up until the last 6 laps of the race. Where were those Alfa Romeos? They were both inside Q3 and then both dramatically tumbled out of that top 10 almost instantly and were anonymous for the rest of the races. It's just unbelievable. So yeah, Zhou Guanyu this weekend sadly has to be a disqualification for him. I don't think it's fair to the other drivers that he's been able to survive as long as he had. And yeah, now it's inevitable. He has been disqualified. He's only had 2 Latifis this season. It should have been a hell of a lot more. There's been probably at least another 3 occasions where he should have had one but escaped one. He can't escape anything more. I love him. I like the guy. I think he's a great guy overall. I think he did well in the latter stages of 2022, where he was matching and beating Bottas, but now both drivers have tumbled down the order dramatically and seemingly neither wanting to push each other. They're just quite happy, just turning round, just doing the laps. Doesn't matter where they finish, it's just frustrating. So Zhou Guanyu, a disqualification on the Cruel Room. And then, last of the runners, we come to Valtteri Bottas, Zhou Guanyu's teammate, who did initially finish ahead of Zhou Guanyu, but slipped behind him as he received a 5-second time penalty for absolutely walloping Lance Stroll. Now, let's be honest, Valtteri Bottas is disqualified anyway, can't do anything else with him, but I do have to just give him that little bit of a thumbs up for taking out Lance Stroll. Good little hit there. I enjoyed that greatly watching it. I did laugh, I've got to be honest. I thought, you know what, the rejects around here fighting at the back for P-fucking nothing, and they're still managing to make contact with each other. Unbelievable stuff. So yeah, you know, It's the only good thing he did this weekend, and it got him a penalty, so there you go. Qualified himself in P9, and then, like as mentioned with Zhou Guanyu, tumbled himself down the order rather rapidly, and then just propped himself up at the back for quite a number of laps, and then took out Lance Stroll. That was the only notable thing he did all race. Punt Lance Stroll off, so yeah. And there you go. I probably would have given him bonus points, but he's been disqualified, so I can't give him anything. But yeah, Valtteri Bottas, the last of the official runners anyway. And yeah, there we go. Valtteri Bottas, disqualified. Then we come to the sort of retirement, but isn't quite a retirement. He gets classified as a lap down, and it is Logan Sargeant. Now, this is an unusual one, but the fuel pump failed on his vehicle. And as I'm sure you're all aware, the cars have to provide a minimum amount, I think it's around 3 litres of fuel at the end of the race to go for testing, to make sure no one's been cheating, no one's been naughty. And of course, with the failed fuel pump, it meant that fuel wasn't going through the engine anyway, so he had to slow down dramatically nonetheless, couldn't even make it to the line really. And also, they wouldn't have been able to get that fuel back out of the car when the FIA requested it. So he'd have been chucked out and disqualified anyway. So because he actually ended up as a sort of retirement, they've not checked the fuel. So he kind of gets classified here in 16th or whatever we are in. So bit of a weird one, bit of an unusual one. You don't see that too often these days. But yeah, you know, he'd have been disqualified anyway. So yeah, had to retire the car, and it did also come in at a slow pace as well, it must be said. I saw that last sector, and he'd lifted off massively because obviously not enough fuel, or not the correct amount of fuel going through the engine. Could blow it up potentially. Could certainly cause problems and could cause it to cut out and stuff. So worth saving the engine. He wasn't in the points anyway. Had he been in the points, I think they'd have risked it, but he wasn't. This weekend overall, though, once again, just very meh, very lonely for Sargeant. Looking like 12th place, you think, well, that's decent. And then I say, well, there's only 16 runners sort of finished anyway. And he was the last of them. You had the likes of Alonso and Stroll out. And Sargeant was running around the back for most of it and was only really ahead of the Alfa Romeos, which I've just heavily slated once again. So yeah, another average weekend for Logan Sargeant. That came to nothing in the end, but the P12 finish wouldn't have been highly commended anyway, because he was really just sort of well outside the points even at that point, to be honest. So yeah, Logan Sargeant, disqualified anyway. A bad last lap, really, but that's that. Then we come to the definite retirements on this list. The first in this list, of course, the last that happened in the race, is Lance Stroll. Got punted off by Valtteri Bottas and then just pulled it straight in the pits and thought, fuck this shit, I'm going home. And yeah, happy birthday, Lance Stroll, anyway. Happy birthday to you for the other day. What a super Sunday you had for your birthday, didn't you? The Aston Martin was absolutely dog shit in the hands of him and also his teammate Alonso. That car was absolutely dire. Reminds me of the days when Haas were quite respectably quick. One year, was it 2018? They turned up at Mexico and were P nowhere, literally qualified 19th and 20th. They were dog shit last and had no pace whatsoever. Or like when Williams, back at Monaco in those days, where they had like 2014, 2015, where they had a really good car, turned up at Monaco, down at back out in Q1 and could do nothing all race. Very reminiscent of that from Aston Martin, although we have seen a decline over a number of races, to be fair. Lance Stroll, there's nothing to really say about his race, other than he's disqualified anyway, so can't score points, and unlikely to have scored points had he actually not been disqualified, because once again, another terrible effort. Lance Stroll, there you go. In the pits and out, retired, got punted off by Bottas. Next up, it is Fernando Alonso in the other Aston Martin. 2 retirements in a row for Fernando Alonso. What a shame for him, really. Was complaining of the car feeling strange and unusual, and it turns out he picked up a bit of Sergio Perez's death at the start of the race, the debris on the track after the contact was made between himself and Charles Leclerc, of course. That was Perez and Charles Leclerc. Left debris on the track and Alonso collected it, creating severe floor damage, which meant that he couldn't do anything in the race anyway, despite the fact that the car looked dog shit throughout most of the weekend once again. So yeah, terrible weekend to forget once again by Aston Martin. They really need to buck their ideas up. Safe for 5th in the Constructors, but it could have been oh so much more this season. And for Fernando Alonso, I'm awarding him 3 points, as mentioned, and as mentioned in previous episodes. The maximum a retirement driver can score is 5, so out of the maximum of 5 he can be awarded, he's getting 3, which I think is fair, realistically, to represent overall a poor weekend that wasn't all necessarily his fault, but once again, a terrible weekend for Aston Martin. and for Fernando Alonso. Then we come to Kevin Magnussen in the second of the Haas as well. The second sort of half of the Haas, because it's all a bit smashed up and in bits, isn't it? Unbelievable stuff. I was toying with the idea of giving him a Latifi, which of course would have meant a disqualification, because Kevin Magnussen is on his final warning, but I have given him the benefit of the doubt this time around, simply for the fact that it was a suspension failure that sent him off into the wall, causing big damage. Would K-Mag have done anything that race? Probably not. No, he was running round towards the back anyway, fighting with the likes of the Alfa Romeos and the Logan Sargeants of this world. Yeah, I do have to give him a little bit of sympathy there. And just glad that he's okay after the huge shunt. Haas don't need that, do they? They've dropped down to last in the constructors' standings now. Not really any sign of them potentially scoring any more points this season, looking by the bloody tyre life of the car. The fact that it's self-destructing and sending itself into a wall now as well. It doesn't look very good for him, does it? When's Gene Haas going to ring Michael Andretti and go, I found an easier way for you to get into Formula 1, lads. Do you want to buy this team? I could see it happening, to be honest. They've got a bit of a base in America, of course, already. They've got the infrastructure built already in the UK. They don't have to go through all this official entries process, which is causing massive headaches because no one in F1 wants an extra team, even though everyone else does. But the Formula 1 teams are getting a bit greedy with the money. I can see Gene Haas giving Michael Andretti a bit of a phone call and going, do you want to buy this heap of shit? Do you want it for £1? Go on then. You know, let's see. But that's what I can see is going to happen at the moment. But yeah, overall, terrible weekend for K-Mag. Not his fault that he retired, which just escapes him a disqualification, to be honest. But I can't be kind any longer. If he gets it wrong again, he will be disqualified. It's just 2 points out of a maximum of 5 for Kevin Magnussen. That's generous, I know it is, but I'm just glad he's okay. And then last but by no means least, this is of course Checo! Sergio Perez in that wonderful, wonderful Red Bull. Oh, la-dee-da-ray. He had a great start off the line after a mediocre qualifying, and then he just decided, oh, Charles Leclerc doesn't exist, I'm going to turn in on him. And in the words of Lewis Hamilton, he did a me in Qatar when he saw the replay in the cool-down room at the end there before they went onto the podium, which was quite funny, actually. They had a bit of a laugh and a joke. But yeah, all he did was just come straight across, chop Charles Leclerc. Charles had nowhere to go. Charles was lucky he only picked up a bit of front wing damage, to be honest. But as for Sergio Perez, it was heavy side pod damage, heavy floor damage, and suspension damage as well. His home Grand Prix in Mexico, and he goes and throws it away in turn 1. Yeah, I'm sure that I'd love to see him leading. Yeah, I'm sure that I'd love to see him in the podium places. But he could have literally kept himself a bit tidy there. He didn't have to come across as much. Charles had given him space. I reckon he still could have come out of turn 3, turn 4, down that straight in around 3rd or 4th position, giving the fans something to cheer about. But as it was, under pressure, not just from the home fans, but also from Red Bull as well, he's massively overly gone in there with his head just completely out of proportion. He didn't know what the fuck he was doing, and he's ruined it for himself. So yeah, as mentioned now, I can see Lewis Hamilton getting this runners-up spot easily. Halfway down now from 39 points to 20, and had Hamilton not been disqualified in the US, it'd have been on the back of him, if not already ahead of him by this point as well. So yeah, and he's count his chickens, does Perez, that he's still ahead of him, but I can't see how the rest of this season now, the way that Lewis Hamilton is on form and the fact that Checo is just throwing it away at every single race, causing damage as well. Let's not forget that. It's not as if he's just doing shit. He's actually retiring from races with poor performances. So, yeah, Sergio Perez, disqualified anyway, has been disqualified for a long time. And will we see him next year in that Red Bull? I'm doubtful at the moment. So there we were then, guys. Those were the runners and riders of the Mexican Grand Prix. Let me know your thoughts and feedback down below. Did I score any drivers too high? Any too low? The updated standings with the scores I have just awarded are on the screen now. Fuck's sake, people are going to really criticise me, aren't they? Look at that scoreboard. Do you want to know the genuine truth here? The genuine, God's honest truth. When I saw that Dan sent me those back with 2 of them out in front by just a solitary point over like the next 6 cars, I genuinely said to Dan, I was like, shall I redo these? Because people are going to think I'm cheating. Like, I was actually going to manufacture the points that I have just awarded because I didn't realise it was going to make everything that close, and I thought, no, people are going to think I'm cheating, I need to rescore the drivers. But in the end I thought, no, I can't rescore the drivers, I need to keep it as fair as I can. Those are my honest scores that I did at the end of the checkered flag falling, like I do every single race. I don't look at the previous results. And then there they are. And I thought, for fuck's sake, everyone's going to think I'm making this up as I go along. But literally now, this is just proof that it can be anyone's. It can literally be anyone's this season now. There's so many drivers that are in contention. I would even say down to Hulkenberg, realistically, could still be in with a chance. It's only like 11.5 points or something. A driver fucks up, Hulkenberg keeps excelling. It could literally be anyone, so let's see. Let's not forget as well, of course, Kevin Magnussen is still on his final warning, but not playing a real big part in this Cruel Room Championship. The main one, of course, is Lando Norris with 3 Latifis and a final warning to him. Any more mistakes by him or anything that I deem is under-delivering for that McLaren car and for Lando himself, we'll see him disqualified and joining that ever-growing pile now that Zhou Guanyu has been added. A massive thanks, as always, out to Dan, formerly of Mushy Gaming, for providing me with the scoreboard that you see on your screen right now, for the intros, for the outros, and for the driver icons you see in the top of your screen as I talk about each driver. Without him, this series would be more pointless than it already is. Who could forget Dave, F1 Games PlayStation, the Mr. I'm so bitter because Dan's got 2,000 subscribers. I'm going to steal Josh's catchphrases with Georgia the Russell. Thanks, as always, go out to him for providing me with the Latifi of the weeks. And yeah, who can forget, of course, Dominic Orlando for providing me with the voice of Nicholas Latifi. So I will see you all again next Tuesday, 6 PM for the Brazilian Grand Prix. It's a sprint race format. Let's see how it goes. Can we see some unexpected results here in Brazil? It's a good circuit, provides exciting racing usually. So I'm very, very keen to see what happens. Thanks a lot for watching, guys. And as always, much love.